SeniorLivingGuide.com podcast offers solutions and resources to create the best quality of life as we age. And now, let's welcome your host, Darlene Mahoney.
Does the idea of searching for senior housing solutions seem overwhelming? SeniorLivingGuide.com is your one-stop shop for all things senior housing, memory care, home help, home care, and other senior resources. Visit us today at SeniorLivingGuide.com to connect directly and get the information that you need to make the very best decision for you or your loved ones. And I would like to express our gratitude to our podcast sponsor, Transmed Care Long Distance Medical Transportation. When a loved one with a disability or medical condition needs to relocate, Transmed Care is here to help with safe and secure nationwide medical transport services with an emphasis on comfort and care.
Transmed Care Long Distance Medical Transportation is a business built on care. Another satisfied customer writes,
"My family and I were extremely pleased with the professionalism, warmth, friendliness, and competence of the Transmed Care team. They were on time, patient, obliging, and kept in touch regularly during the ride from New Jersey to Florida. And they were very kind to my husband. I highly recommend this company."
To learn more about Transmed Care, visit the website at trans-medcare.com.
Thank you for joining us on this SeniorLivingGuide.com podcast. We are joined today by CJ, who's going to share his journey on navigating grief. If you are experiencing grief with someone that potentially is still living and or have experienced grief of past loved ones, this is an episode that hopefully will provide you resources and ways to navigate that in a positive way. Thank you for listening. And we are joined today with CJ Infantino. He is an ex-Silicon Valley engineer turned writer, filmmaker, podcast producer, fashion designer, and speaker. After losing his wife to cancer, he became a solo widowed dad to 3 kiddos, which transformed his life and purpose. Motivated by this journey, CJ left his successful tech career behind and dedicated himself to helping others navigating grief and loss. He also co-hosts the podcast The Day After, which is a podcast dedicated to sharing stories and navigating grief. I am so excited to have you today, CJ.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So a little background for our listeners. You and I met at PodFest in Orlando, Florida, and it's just a get together for people to learn different things about podcasting. But while you're there, you get to meet all these different podcasters and connect with them in a different way. And you and I, we probably talked for like an hour.
Yeah, quite a while. Yeah, after the panel. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. And we just talked about your podcast, and then we really got deep into the grief side of, what your podcast is about and really what you're very passionate about. And I found that so relatable after losing, 2 parents in a very short period of time. And we just shared so much story, and it was like, oh my gosh, someone can relate to me.
Yeah.
That's what I loved about it is I was listening to you and I felt the same way, but I don't know that people really understand how to navigate and process grief, because one of the things you mentioned is that, your wife passed away, and within a short period of time, everyone made you kind of feel, I guess, that you should be bouncing back, getting over it and moving on. But that's not the case. That's not the reality.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like this sense that time is going to heal these wounds. But with grief, I mean, anybody who's experienced like a really profound loss, a close loss, you understand that grief stays with you for the rest of your life. And the only thing that changes is our relationship to it. And time is only one factor in that. It's really confronting it and learning to heal from it and being willing to go into the depths of it to understand it. But yeah, we are so conditioned as a society and as a world to say, well, time has passed, so therefore you should be better. And I don't want to hear your grief because it brings me down. Now, not everybody's like that. That's a generalization, but that is like the general consensus of like, okay, you're back to who you were. So let's just go back to the way that life was. But life is completely different for me. And while you're still navigating potentially the loss that I had. Like, your life has moved on. Mine has not, because my whole world has changed.
Right. And I think people, they want you to move on because they don't know they don't know what to say. It's like when someone passes away, what do you say? Do you send sympathy or prayers or what have you, but it's hard because you don't want to say something wrong. You don't want to overstep. And then I know a lot of times people offer, what can I do? But they don't really put out what you can do. And then people experiencing the grief, they don't want to ask people to do things for them either. So I think that's probably what it is, just not wanting to deal with it themselves.
Yeah.
Even as you're dealing with it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's a very confronting thing. It's one of the lowest, heaviest emotions that we experience in this life is grief. And I mean, it's just like, you see this reaction that people have when they attend a funeral or like they're confronted with death. There is this visceral reaction that anybody has walking into there, where you realize that we are all going to die, that we have this mortality. And if it's a young loss, then you realize like we are not guaranteed anything.
Right.
So it can be very confronting. And now if you were like trying to go somebody who's experiencing this profound loss, it's that much more so, because you're seeing it in somebody that you either care about or you're close with or that you know. So yeah, you're just like, what do I say to that person? What do I do? And also like, what is coming up in me? Which I think a lot of people don't even recognize that stuff is coming up in them, that's confronting them, that is causing them to react in a way that maybe is not so helpful to the person that's grieving.
It's like out of sight, out of mind. If I don't acknowledge it, it's not going to happen. One of my very best girlfriends died of ovarian cancer at 37. And I was like, I never want to hear that again. I don't want to hear anyone talk about ovarian cancer. I just want it to go away. I'm going to block it out of everything in my world, my mind, everything, because it was such an aggressive, horrible disease that happened very quickly. And someone so young, which just didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
And then the craziness of it all is that was the first time I had heard of ovarian cancer. And then my own mother was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and that's what she eventually passed away from. And I'm like going, I don't want this in my life anymore. Cancer in general, but the ovarian cancer was it plagued my world for two very significant people in my life.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I think it's hard. And, even with the death of my friend, who was really my very first significant loss in my life, I would have nightmares. I would dream about her. I mean, every time I still think about her, and I still talk to her on occasion.
Yes.
ESP wise, but, because there's something that will never die about her. And one thing with her being so young is she never aged past the 37, which I'm significantly older than that now, and I'm aging, but I still remember her like young and beautiful and amazing. So those are still how I see her.
Yeah. Yeah. They become forever young. Like, I'm now older than my wife. I wasn't. She was always older than me by 3 months, and she would always joke with me about it. But it was like, I remember the first time being like, holy shit, I'm older than her now. And like you said, in my mind, because there is no other way to imagine her, she is always going to be 35. She will always be young, and I am the one that is now aging.
Yeah. Yeah. Young, beautiful, fantastic mama.
Yeah.
Yeah. All those wonderful things. So just a little bit about how you got to where you are and how you are processing your grief and how you are dealing with it. Because I know that a lot of our listeners are caregivers of their family, their seniors, which may not be fantastic health-wise. And then just in general, I think we're all experiencing a grief in different ways at different times of our lives. So tell me a little bit about where you're at today and how you got there.
Big question. So I will try to keep it brief, but it's been a journey. So I'm about 3.5 years into this. So she passed away in 2020, almost exactly a year before she passed. My dad passed from lung cancer. And then 6 months after my wife passed, my son had a nerve tumor in his neck. It's benign. He's okay now. He just got his scan a couple of years ago. So he's good, but it has caused quite a bit of what I'm now understanding is caregiver PTSD. which is a term that I just heard like 2 weeks ago, but I think it encompasses all of the experience of watching somebody slowly fade away from cancer. She was diagnosed 5.5 years, so in 2015, before she died. And that left its mark on me, where there is this extreme health anxiety, where I used to be at the doctor's all the time. I would do everything preventative. Like I was like on top of it. And now to stay on top of it requires an enormous amount of effort, because there's fear that is unlike anything I've experienced before, because I'm convinced that I will die, because people around me are dying young, watching my wife die. One of the progressions of her cancer was potential blindness. So if I'm out in the sun, I look at like a white fence and you get like kind of the shadows in your eyes, or like the brightness in your eyes, I immediately go into panic and I'm like, I'm going blind. Like all these leftover things that like nobody really talks about happen when you're watching somebody literally die. And that compounded the grief, because not only was I feeling this like deep sense of loss, and then having to care for my kids, and then watching my kids go through their own health issues and seeing how their grief has affected them, I also now have like this health anxiety, this anxiety of like, I'm dying. Like these are rational thoughts. So it's been a very, very short but very long journey. And things that I've done, like, I mean, therapy, I've done many modalities of therapy. I mean, I was in therapy before this as well. I've been in therapy for about 16 years now. So it's been kind of a lifelong thing for me. And finding people in my life who are able to hold my grief and support me in that has also been a really, really key thing for me, because not everybody is able to sit with you. Like we were talking earlier, it's like most people just want you to be better so they can like enjoy you again and move forward. But when you have a significant loss, there is this sense that you die with that person. And I died with my wife and I became somebody new. And I have been spending 3.5 years figuring out, who am I, right? I was with my wife since I was 18 years old. We had 18 years together. Like she was my high school sweetheart. She was my world. She was my everything. Like I adore her. I still adore her. She was incredible. And it was always Ariana and CJ. And then she died and I just became CJ. So I was like, who am I? What am I now? What are the things that I like? Because did I like this thing because it was something her and I did and I just enjoyed being with her? So it's like this discovery of who you are, letting go of the old ways that you used to be, and grieving the loss of who you used to be, grieving the loss of the future you thought you would have with that person, and just confronting that in a way where you unfortunately have to re-experience that pain over and over and over again. And her death was a very physical thing for me. I felt it physically in my body, feeling her die, and I can't explain it, but it was one of the most horrific, painful things that I've ever gone through. And I've had to re-experience that in varying degrees many, many, many times over the past 3.5 years. But that's what it's been taking for me to heal and to grow in my grief. So where I'm at now is the grief is still persistent. My ability to hold it has grown, and the relationship that I have to my wife has grown and changed. So like you mentioned, you talk to your friend every once in a while. I still talk to my wife daily. I talk to my dad daily. Like in my mind, like whether they can hear me or not, or whether whatever's happening, I get to experience them in this new relationship that I've developed over the past 3.5 years with them. And I think for the first time, very recently, like within the past few months, I now finally have a sense of like, they're here, they're with me, they're helping me, they're leading me on this journey and the things that I'm doing. And that was a huge, significant shift for me, because I went from, I am utterly isolated and alone, to, well, they're I now feel them present with me, and they will guide me, and they will lead me, and they will help me. So it's been a big shift. Now things continuously come up. my kids, they're going to re-experience that grief in new ways that I will never understand, because as they grow and they have these milestones, for them, like, they're experiencing this with a new mind, with a new maturity. At sports events, I had one of my children, we were at a tournament, and I noticed that something was off with them when they were competing. So I pulled them aside, and I just knew that it was something with their grief, but they didn't really quite understand that yet. And, we're in the hallway and we're talking for like 20 minutes and crying together and holding each other. And then you kind of like, you got to like shake it off and go back in so they can compete. And like, that's the reality of my life now. So it was this driving force of like, if I don't heal, if I'm not going to continuously heal, if I'm not going to allow myself to re-experience that pain so that way I can heal from it, then I will never be able to show up for my kids in the way that I want to. And I won't be able to show up for myself in the way that I want to, and the mission that I have on this life, or, to have a hope in a future again, because it was gone. Quite literally, I couldn't even imagine it. So now it's being colored in again. And that's, the high level of kind of where it's at right now.
So you know what? I think we're going to take a quick break for our podcast sponsors, TransMedCare Long Distance Medical Transportation.
Hi, this is Andrew Brainerd, owner of TransMedCare Long Distance Medical Transportation. When the time comes to relocate a loved one under medical care, TransMedCare is here to help. We offer nationwide medical transport services with fully customized vans providing all the comforts of home, and licensed medical professionals to accompany your loved one along every mile. At TransMedCare, nothing is more important than bringing your loved one home safely. Visit our website at trans-medcare.com.
One thing you mentioned is a lot of people don't realize, or maybe they do, I don't know, that grief is a physical pain.
Yeah.
It's not just a mental or a sadness. It can literally engulf your entire body. It can cause anxiety attacks. I know that I experienced that after the death of my parents. I was a caregiver for my dad who had dementia, and it was almost like this roller coaster. And then also like looking at all the things that happened while he was still alive, and you're just, and my mom's still alive, all these different things that you could have done differently, or maybe didn't take advantage of spending more time with someone when you had the opportunity. And all that will literally come back to physically engulf you. I can remember, and I know I shared this with you and it's very personal, but I can remember like crying in the car and then cleaning it up and then moving on with my day, because that was my favorite place. That, and honestly, the shower is pretty nice too, but those are like the two go-tos, so that you aren't putting your grief onto other people. Because I was so worried about doing that. I wanted to recover and make it go away so I didn't have to feel the physical pain. So I did that by appearing that I was fine and doing okay. And in reality, you aren't. And that's okay.
Right. It is okay.
One thing you mentioned is surrounding yourself with people that you could confide in and rely on. Do you feel like you've shrunk your base of people in your life, and not saying that it's a bad thing, but just kind of choosing who the important people are that you truly have a connection with, and that's where you spend the majority of your time?
That's a really good question. The answer is sort of. So I never had a huge circle. I'm kind of an introvert. So my circle wasn't that big. But after she died, there was this really weird effect where I was just like, I don't want to be around anybody who knew me with her. It was too hard. And there was something where I'm like, I just need to be around new people who don't have that expectation of who I was. So that started to happen. And then over time, I was like, well, grief is my own, right? Like essentially like what I took from everything you were sharing was like the experience I had of like, my grief was my own. That's what I learned. That's what the world told me. You keep it to you. You show up to work. I don't want to know about anything. Just get your work done, or come here. Let's laugh. Let's hang out. So I had this experience, and I started to isolate, where I was like, I will cry in the car, in the shower. I will cry alone. Like my nightly routine was just, I get in bed, put on music, and I just cried. And I kind of still do that a little bit right now, but that became my routine. So it took years a couple of years to find those people. Like I had to actively go into spaces to where those people might exist, where I'm like, okay, they're safe, they're not. And once I found them, yeah, like I held on to them, and it did shrink in the sense that there are just a few that I'm willing to show up completely like raw and, hey, I need help. It's a little bit of a weird thing to say because I'm very open in public and my writing and all social media, but like I still have a reserve of emotions that are only for specific people in my life and the very few. So I do have kind of this like these rings of people where, you know, there's maybe 2 or 3 that I'm like, when I'm really in it, I can go to them and they're going to know how to handle it and they're going to be willing to sit in it with me. That did shrink. And then I've learned maybe more so the boundaries that I need to have with the different circles in my life more than anything. But it takes a lot of effort to find those people, but it's worth it.
You know, as a woman, and not that I'm saying it's anything different than a man, but you always, you know, you're strong for your kids, you're strong for your family, you have to be strong. You know, I'm the pack mule when we go anywhere. I literally feel like I could not be damaged emotionally. I could not show it because I am woman. Hear me roar. I can do this. I can power through it. You do carry, I think sometimes, and not that men don't as well, but you carry that burden on you so that you're not imposing it on other people. And you do kind of realize that the people in the circle of people that you're with, especially I think as you get older in general anyway, people that are really important, that you really have a connection to, that are really your good friends, are the ones that you choose to spend time with. And other people that are acquaintances, you'll do some stuff, but there's no like true commitment, no emotional attachment, even in friendships, when I think that you're not getting that in return. And you can be, like you said, raw in front of your people that you're around. So
yeah, absolutely.
You know, you said you mentioned therapy. So, and you've been in therapy for a long time. Do you feel like that's a good solution? And that, is there a specific therapist that does better with grief or just a general?
Yeah, another really good question. So I have done many, many modalities. I have a sister who's a therapist, so her and I are constantly talking about this stuff because it's such a big interest of mine and obviously hers. I think it depends on the person. Now, I have opinions of what I think is super helpful or based on my experience, and then the different supporting things around that as well. So one of the most effective therapies that I have participated in, especially for my grief, is called somatic therapy. It's becoming more well-known, I think, now, but what it is it's the body work. So it's all felt sense as opposed to talk therapy. So there's different meditations, different exercises, it's just a different way of working with emotion, because one book that I know almost everybody who's ever done therapy probably knows is The Body Keeps the Score. And it's so true that our bodies hold on to that trauma, and it holds on to everything that we go through. And for me, what drove me to it was 2 things. One, we were talking about like finding these spaces. In addition to therapy, I needed to find a space where I can process my grief and have others who can support me in it. And those are really hard to find, like extremely hard to find, that are safe spaces.
So have you looked at like support groups? I feel like, especially for our listeners who are like a little bit older, taking care of their family that's a little bit older and having that support.
Yeah, I think they're really hard to find good ones, but I think they're extremely useful and necessary, because oftentimes, at least what I found specifically with younger widows and widowers, is the groups either weren't productive in the sense that we weren't all wanting to go in the direction of healing. So they can get a little bit, maybe just a little bit off track. And then you also need to have somebody who can lead it, who has able to keep very strong boundaries with the group, right? Because oftentimes, you know, for whatever reason, you can have an individual who wants to consume the space in the group in a way that's very unhealthy for the group. Right. It's not about the group anymore. It becomes about that individual. Or setting clear intentions. So like I've been in a lot of different types of groups where experiencing like, this is the intention of what we're doing here to make sure that we're all on the same page. Like if you can't show up into a group, even in a friendship, of like, here's the clear intentions and boundaries and the things that we want to experience in this relationship, and a group is just a relationship, then things can go off track very quickly. So I think having those agreements together in any form of a relationship or any group is absolutely necessary for productive healing and kind of having that shared experience. So I do think that they are very useful, but go into it with this expectation of watching for these agreements being set, this intention being set. And if you feel that the group is not serving you, it is 100% okay to leave and go find a group that will. So I ended up finding this specific men's group where I knew the leader for years and years. We did a conference together, and I just randomly was like, I'm going to go. He just opened up the in-person groups in Texas after the pandemic. And at that point I was like, if I don't do something, I'm never going to come out of this. So I went, and I won't go into all the details, but it was my first experience doing somatic therapy. There's the leader that I knew, and then this older gentleman who specialized in somatic therapy. And it was 4 days, and it was the most intense weekend of my entire life. It was literally like 40 years of therapy in 4 days. And it like completely shifted the space that I was allowing for my grief. And it was so intense. But out of that, I met a couple of men, one of which I'm extremely close with now, who is always there when I need, who I can be like, hey, this is exactly what's happening. And he understands how to handle it. So that was my first entry into it. And then I found somebody locally where I live right now, and I worked with her for a year. And the reason why I went to somatic therapy is because there was this disconnect between me and my body. So like I mentioned, I had this like have this horrible health anxiety. It is getting better. The problem was I only saw my body as a thing to kill me. So I was completely disconnected. And when you're disconnected from your body, like you are no longer like feeling, you're just like have this weird, either anxious attachment to it or something. And I was like, I need to get back into it. That's what somatic therapy did for me. It allowed me to process this grief. It allowed me to experience these wildly vivid imagery. And like, it was, every session was so profound and like life-changing for me. It was unreal. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it. It was hard. It was painful, but it was incredible. So that was huge. And I did that along with just your normal, either talk therapy or CBT or DBT and all those things. So those were, and then the support groups, like those are kind of the mix of things that I've did. There's other things that I've been trying now. This thing called biofield tuning. And that's been really, really interesting because the idea is our bodies are mechanical, electrical, and chemical, right? But we're typically only dealing with the mechanical and chemical. Biofield works on your electric field. So the electricity that keeps everything going and all of that. And it's a little bit esoteric. It's a little bit out there, but I'm game to try anything. I'm always experimenting to see like what resonates and what doesn't. And this has been pretty effective. I've been doing it for 3 months now. So I would just say like, try as much as you have access to and what resonates with you, and just don't stop. And if something's not working, it's okay to be like, this isn't working. Maybe it will later. Like maybe that's not what you need now. But like, keep trying, keep exploring, and understand what is it that's presenting. How is grief presenting in you, right? Like you mentioned, you have a lot of people who are caregivers to older folks. Like that's still intense grief. And you're still watching a human go through this suffering, and that will have an impact on you. So like pay attention to where is that presenting in your body and in your mind, and then figure out, okay, well, how can I plug in something that might work on that specific thing, and be willing to go into the depths of that. And you'll come out stronger, and you'll come out a different version of yourself.
So I have 2 points. Well, actually maybe 3. It's called sympathetic. Is that what you said?
Somatic, SOMATIC, I believe you spell it. Yeah.
I'm going to definitely check that out. And that's primarily a physical type therapy.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking, but then you're doing body work. So it could be meditations where you're sinking in your body. Yeah. There's just different exercises they do. Yeah.
Well, that makes sense because, one thing I mentioned that it takes a physical, emotional, toll on your insides, but it definitely can take such a physical toll. So releasing whatever that does, I'm not an expert by any means, but I do know that even with me, just exercising or honestly walking or running can absolutely clear my head and put me in a totally different mind space. And that's just in a general setting. You had mentioned while you're taking care of a senior that, may be experiencing health problems or cognitive decline is one of the biggest ones. You experience grief. We did a podcast not that long ago, experiencing grief with those still living. And it was a podcast that we honestly had started out and it was supposed to be about something totally different. And then we started talking about that. And I had this flow of emotion come through me because I did not realize it. But I experienced that. I did not know that's what it was because you see the person that you knew prior to being sick or having cognitive issues or whatever the case may be, and they're leaving. That person's not existing anymore. And so you're grieving that process because you can't fix it and it's still continuing. And I think that that's so important to acknowledge that it's okay and to acknowledge that that exists because I didn't know that it was a thing. And then I realized it really and truly is. And I'm sure that you experienced that significantly with your wife as she was declining.
Yeah. Anticipatory grief. It's definitely a real thing.
Anticipatory grief. Yeah. There you go. It has a name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to watch. It's hard to watch the human spirit leave a body.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. Every step of the way, I was losing a piece of the woman that I was in love with. And I had to relearn. How do you relearn to, our marriage and our relationship had to constantly be redefined every step of the way, over the 5.5 years. So yeah, for sure. It's hard.
And how frustrating for her because I'm sure she was having physical issues that forbid her from doing the things that she wanted to do. Get up, make lunch for the kids, do whatever. She wasn't able to do those things. And that's got to be just a heartbreaking thing to experience, but also to watch.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, before we sign off, is there anything else that you wanted to share that you feel like would be beneficial to those that are experiencing, the grief with someone still living and or post? I mean, it's been some time since your wife passed away and you're still working through it. And that's absolutely not abnormal.
That's right. Yeah, it's not.
So I think it's important to acknowledge that.
Yeah, I would say give yourself grace. And by that, I mean, don't worry about forgiving yourself or that you're beating yourself up or that you're experiencing weird emotions or that you have these crazy thoughts that come into your mind, because watching somebody fade away from you and then losing them is going to take you down many, many, many paths, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and all of that's okay. As long as you can continue to show up for yourself. And the best definition of resilience, because I hated that word, absolutely hated it. And when people would tell me, you're strong, you're so resilient, I would push back and it would infuriate me. And my therapist at the time gave me the best reframe ever. And it was resilience is showing up every day in whatever capacity you have. And I think if you can be willing to show up every day for yourself and for your loved ones in whatever capacity you have and understand that this is a journey, and that things will change and things that you once thought were true might not be true. And it will continue to morph and change, and you will find your way if you allow yourself to keep being honest and keep showing yourself love and keep showing yourself kindness and all of the things that you're going to go through. And just know that you have to confront your grief. And it's also okay if you don't want to right away. There's so many people that I've interviewed. They're like, it took me 20 years. It took me 5 years. It took me 10 years. It took me 2 years. I didn't want anything to do with it. That's also normal. And that's also okay. It's okay. It's hard. You just went through something horrific. Why would you want to continue experiencing that? It makes sense to numb out, but give yourself that grace to know that this is your journey and it doesn't have to look like anybody else's.
That's perfect. It's your journey. Thank you so much for joining us today, CJ, on this podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please share SeniorLivingGuide.com podcasts with anyone that you think would benefit for the information and resources that we provide. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or really anywhere that you find music or podcasts.